Today I raised the issue of the war in Ukraine. We're 7 months into the conflict, and I specifically want to talk about the sexual violence that's been perpetrated on the women and children of Ukraine. And we know that sexual violence is a recognised weapon of war. And there hasn't really been much discussion around this aspect of the war here in Ireland, but I really feel we need to have a conversation on that. And as I said, rape is recognised as a weapon of war. It spreads disease, it destroys family ties, it inflicts harm over generations, and it's used to terrorise, humiliate and subdue a population. It also reinforces gender inequalities and normalises sexual violence even after the conflict has ended. And using sexual violence as a weapon of war surged after the wars in the former Yugoslavia and the genocide in Rwanda in the 1990s, and we know that it has been used in a number of conflicts, unfortunately, across the globe, in Sierra Leone, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in Colombia, Guatemala, Peru, Uganda, South Sudan, and against the Yazidi women. And we know what's happening in the Ukraine, unfortunately, as well. Reports have started to emerge from liberated towns such as Bucha. And last week I met with other parliamentarians in the Basque Country to discuss this topic. And we met two amazingly brave and courageous Ukrainian MPs. And they gave some really harrowing details of what is emerging from various towns and villages across Ukraine. And it's really shocking. Survivors of wartime rape internationally have reported long-term physical injuries and, of course, long-term mental health injury as well. And there are, of course, children also born of rape in conflict zones, and this often leads to continuous family conflict, domestic violence and intergenerational impact on the fabric of that society and the identity of a nation. And to mitigate these long-term impacts of rape in conflict zones, survivors need access to emergency contraception, abortion care, mental health supports and medical care for physical injuries. We need to talk about rape as a weapon of war as well, so that Ireland and other countries who are supporting Ukraine as they fight to protect their country and people against Putin provide this level of support for the survivors of sexual violence in Ukraine. We also need to support survivors by recognising the harm done to them and help dispel any stigma and shame associated with sexual violence in a conflict zone. The conversation with regards to the prosecution of war crimes in Ukraine has started, and indeed there has been a number of people convicted already. However, wartime rapes are very rarely prosecuted and very hard to secure a prosecution or a conviction when they are actually prosecuted. And I would like to see Ireland taking a leadership role to ensure that more of these crimes are investigated and prosecuted and convictions achieved. I would also like to see a debate leader here in the Chamber with the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Minister Simon Coveney, to specifically discuss sexual violence as a weapon of war in Ukraine, and urge him to specifically ensure that our aid budget has an element of targeted support ring-fenced to help survivors get the healthcare they need in a timely fashion, and that Ireland uses all of its diplomatic power to ensure that war criminals are pursued and prosecuted, and the rapes perpetrated on the women of children of Ukraine are dealt with. Gurv Mahagat.